In 2005, celebrated fashion photographer David LaChapelle made his documentary filmmaking debut with a visually arresting film shot on the streets of Los Angeles's gritty South Central neighborhood. After this community is nearly destroyed in the days of violent riots after the 1992 Rodney King verdict, dancer Tommy the Clown Johnson creates a kinetic, athletic form of hip-hop competitive dancing that he dubs clowning, which later breaks through to the mainstream as krumping. 2005's RIZE was the choice of Lynn Webb. As we begin our journey, Doc to School. Lynn, what would you like to say about RIZE?
I think I mentioned it last week that this is one of those films that I've always seen the advertisement for over the years, but just for whatever one reason or another, never pulled the trigger. You know, and I think it's because somewhere along the way, I realized that it was a documentary, which meant that so this is something I gotta really watch, pay attention to, and then it would become like, you know, I can't watch it and pay attention, you know, because I'm working or whatever. But I've heard huge things about this documentary. Like this documentary has been, you know, like lauded over the years for this look into this culture in South Central LA, which I think is very interesting because if the first time you hear about South Central LA, for a lot of people, the images that may come to mind are either rapping or gangs, violence, you know, or riots.
Right.
And, you know, and not surprisingly, this documentary, which is about dancing, the first images are of the riots.
Right. But the Watts riots.
The Watts riots from the 60s. And then it moves forward to the LA riots in 1992 in the wake of the Rodney King verdict. And, you know, the violence that ensues from there and what that violence, that cycle of violence does to the residents of this area. Right. And then it moves immediately into the story of Tommy the Clown, a former drug dealer turned birthday hip hop clown who just reshapes and rebuilds his life upon just being a positive influence for good, to sound corny, right? But blending in the world of hip hop, blending in the movements of dance of clowns, because clowns are kind of be all over the place with their hands and jumping around. But he's not doing that. He's doing the dancing, and it develops into its own kinetic form of dancing that called clowning. That people, the kids who at one time who are just sitting there as he entertains at the birthday party, as they grow up or become inspired by him, follow in his wake, and they become a movement unto themselves, right? And that movement, as those children continue growing and developing, morphs into krumping, because what they were doing for fun and for sport and for positivity, they realized that this was something that fed their soul a little bit more and fed to the energy that they were feeling inside of themselves in the midst of South Central LA. Because while they're dancing, while they're performing, the gang life is still out there. Right. Is still present. The violence is still out there, present. It is right on the other side of the gate, you know, from where they dance. They are right there in the midst. And the dance becomes the escape for them, because just like a lot of people, you hear them talk about how the drug game becomes their life, especially when you're talking about in that culture with the Crips and the Bloods. The dancing, whether it be clowning, whether or not it be krumping, it becomes their life, right? And that really spoke to me because as a bit of an artist myself, I know how much my artwork, my drawing, my writing feeds who I am.
Right.
And it is very much a part of me. And sometimes when I feel like I need to like get away from stuff, I can always pick up my pen and just go to paper and draw. I can write out things. And dancing is that for people, all the dancers that I've encountered in my travels, dancing becomes their life.
Sure, absolutely. Which
is why I wanted Ariel here, because dancing is her life. She was a comic book store owner, but she never stopped dancing. She was a dancer first, will still a dancer, will die a dancer.
Right.
I know people that whether or not they dance in burlesque, they dance on a stage, they do hip hop dancing, they do ballet dancing, they do jazz dancing, they do tap dancing. Dance is their life. Because that is their movement. That is what gets their blood going, right? And watching this documentary, which I said like when we came in, is my favorite type of documentary. I love a documentary that just turns the cameras on and then just gets out of the way.
Right.
And lets life happen.
Sure.
And lets these people tell their story. Doesn't have to have talking heads in there to psychoanalyze, what is krumping. You don't get, you get a bit of a definition of what is krumping, but that's from the dancers. It's, and it's not a tutorial at all.
Right.
There's no breakdown of it. And because it's so much more than just the dancing. It is a part of them. And the way that this David LaChapelle, which speaks to him being a photographer, being someone who was familiar with capturing life and putting it into the circle of his lens, and extrapolating the world there, the way that he connects the dots of the violence in South Central to the release that dance offers to these performers, to it being just a continuation of the spirit that has been with us since Africa, with archival footage to prove it.
Right.
And how I was once writing for a music magazine, and I was always asking, especially like Black artists, did they think that there was such a thing as, like, you always talk about, you hear people talk about generational trauma.
Yes.
And I wonder whether or not there was anything like a generational, like, or universal beat or music.
Right.
That just gets passed on.
Right.
Subliminally in some way from all of us, right? And this documentary actually gives image to that,
right?
Which makes the dancing that occurs on screen just that much more alive, that much more vital. And then when you hear these performances, whether it be Tommy the Clown, who has returned to prominence because he's just appeared in Kendrick Lamar's music video, They're Not Like Us, which speaks to, how much of a cultural figure.
He's an icon.
He's an icon. He's an icon of LA.
Yeah.
Like, because everybody, when he shows up in They're Not Like Us, everybody, he got Tommy.
He got Tommy.
It's a rat. But Tommy the Clown to the dancers from Lil C, Miss Prissy, Tiny Eyes, all of these dancers, Larry C.
Larry.
Yeah, Larry.
Don't forget Larry.
Gotta remember Larry. it's just, and how much that informs their life. It becomes the escape from the violence that is right around the corner, that unfortunately does strike in this movie. One lost soul, unfortunately, but to see how much of informs in their life, and it really is just a beautiful story, because because like I said, David LaChapelle gets out of the way. It is just so honest and pure, right? And these are performers in this, at the time of the documentary, they're in, like, most of them are in their late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
But to hear them, because of the world they live in, feeling to a degree defeated, because they know where they know they're living in this, like, they go outside and they wear the wrong colors, they dance the wrong way, make one false move on a corner, and that can be it.
Sure.
But they also recognize that this can be an escape for them. It's an escape for them to release the fury that is within them, and everybody is understanding, because krumping is a dance that can come off as kind of like almost a violent, force of arms and legs moving and jumping around and throwing your body against one another. But what it actually is, it's solidarity. As singular as the dancers are, when they are dancing, they are in solidarity with one another, which is why there's always the cipher of dancers around them. That's why when they bounce off one another, they push off against one another, but that's just to receive more energy, and then there is a cathartic release of energy where you see where everything is spent, and because everybody knows exactly what they're dealing with. They know from the story that is being told right there on the screen. It was like just a moving event watching this documentary. And then it also, and you see the connective tissues with early Africa, but you then show a bit of connective tissues with the church.
Yeah. Yep.
The church as well. Right. But not in any type of not turning a blind eye to it. There is connection there. There is solidarity there. There is at least a oneness of spirit of what we want. Not saying that one is greater than the other, because these are not church going kids, not all of them. Right. Because some of them are, and that is beautiful, and they're not turned away for that. It is such a beautiful thing. And smartly, as the krumping and the clowning becomes almost here to a gang of itself with their different sets, they get into a battle royal that Tommy the Clown puts together at the Great Western Forum. This is a big thing.
It was a big.
I don't know if you know this. This is where the Lakers play basketball.
Yeah, I know it's a stadium, and it was huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was full. It was full.
Yeah.
For this battle royal that is a fantastic event. Yeah. It is a absolute fantastic event of unity, of dancing, of energy, of righteousness, of music, of the neighborhood, a city coming together in celebration. Does it end on a slightly down note? Yes. But that's just, again, the reality of where they are, just peeping its ugly head as it is wont to do, but it doesn't stop the show. it doesn't stop the show. We get up and we rise again. But with these different sets, there was one moment that they show where there is a set of the krumpers, and there's like, there's this street krumpers and that street krumpers and the business krumpers and the religious krumpers and all this stuff. And then there's a group of Asian krumpers.
Mm-hmm.
And they show them in the beginning when they're doing all this list off, and they don't come back again till just before the film ends.
Right.
And they speak of like, we crump too. You think we can't dance like black people, and then you see them crumping, and then you see this one lone white guy, who is a member of some set, I don't know,
sure,
like, and he's getting into it, and people are talking about like, people think I can't do it, but then they see me and I get on there, whatever, and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You never see them again in the film, and they don't show up until damn near the end of the film.
Right.
I appreciate that they at least showed them, but I'm glad that they weren't a big part of it.
Sure.
Because as much as they can crump, they can't dance like black people.
Right.
Because they would not have the same connection to the church. They would not have the same connection to the generations from which this was born.
Right.
They would not have connection to what is really going on in the streets that is feeding this energy, this dance culture.
Right.
And thus they are doing what they have always done and continue to do, which is just parrot what they see.
Right.
And I'm glad there was not, I actually would have preferred that if they weren't even mentioned.
Sure.
But they're there, they're not given much shine. So that was the one thing that I bumped up against. But all in all, I actually, in watching this documentary, was just, I just was sitting there just amazed at this lovingness. And like I said, Ariel was going to be on here. She was a huge fan of this film. And as much as I've loved it, loved this documentary from afar, every dancer in my life that I've talked to or has found out that we're going to be reviewing it, they've all like, man, that documentary is all that. Mm-hmm. That it's some who maybe like were young when that's what got me into dancing. Some was that's kind of like re-energized me for dancing, and you still see some of that krumping dancing turn up in dancing that you see.
Absolutely.
Now on stages everywhere. Because a few of the dancers have gone on to become choreographers, mm-hmm. So like I said, Tommy the Clown is still doing his thing. So this was absolutely, and we run the risk of doing documentaries. Most of the documentaries we're going to do are going to be good documentaries. So it's really just how much they're going to speak to us, right?
Absolutely.
Knowing that, I ran the risk of looking at the documentary and say, oh, this is a really good documentary, and just keep it moving. This was absolutely a moving experience for me, mm-hmm. watching this film. And I enjoyed it so much so, which is why I'm not going into super details about what goes on in it. And you're welcome to if you like. But I would just as soon as people, if you haven't seen this, go see RIZE. If you have seen it, see it again. Because it is just an amazing documentary.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I think, knowing David LaChapelle's background, it's beautiful.
Oh my God.
I think he really captures both the energy, but also the beauty mm-hmm. of the form of these, which, you have to say, it seems like it would be difficult to capture the beauty of it, because I think it's easy to kind of be dismissive of it because it is very kind of, it appears herky-jerky and it's aggressive. It's out there. But he does a great job capturing it. And I love the fact that you have this document. Mm-hmm. And much like you, my favorite documentaries are the ones where the documentarian kind of gets out the way. because a lot of times you watch these and they're almost, it's like they're almost fussy. Like you said, you get, you know, talking head after talking head after talking head after talking head, where oftentimes a documentary seems to be more about the thing,
right,
than it shows you the thing.
Exactly.
And this, you certainly don't have that. I think where I think David LaChapelle's kind of, you can tell he's new at this. There were moments that I wanted him to follow up on more, though.
Yes,
where
that's
you
true.
just kind of follow.
He could have been a little bit more investigative.
Like, you know, as you mentioned, you know, Tommy the Clown is acknowledged as the person who started this. Mm-hmm. But about midway through, you see that there has been a transition, that now there's, you don't even want to say a new generation, because I got the sense that all of the dancers who krumped worked with Tommy the Clown at some point.
Certainly a few of them.
And had just sort of broken off.
Yes.
But the documentary never really explores what happened.
Yeah.
That you go from this to the other. And quite honestly, and I don't know how much of it is for show, how much of it is real, you get the sense that there's some tension. Energy, but you know, I won't even use tension, but certainly there's some energy between the two camps that isn't explored. As you said, it kind of ends on a downer.
The battle royal, the dance contest.
Well, I'm talking about the documentary itself. Kind of ends on a downer, where it's not an M. Night Shyamalan film. Tommy loses his house, which kind of spoke to something I was thinking about the whole documentary. Like, what are the economics of this thing? Like, you do this, where does it, you know, what are the economics? You mentioned the connection to the church and to these different other African dance practices, which there's this wonderful sequence where the film
juxtapositions
and then cuts back and forth between, as you said, this wonderful footage. And that part was so well done. Mm-hmm. The problem was, now he has set me up so that when he brings church into it,
you want to see something.
I wanted that level of depth.
That's fair.
With the connection to the church.
That's fair.
And it's not there. And then what I kept waiting for, because to me, the best part about the sequence where he parallels it with the African dance practices is that it's not just the dance. It's the makeup and the face,
the whole thing.
So that when we get to the portion with the church, I kept waiting for gospel mime to be part of it, because now you can you can parallel it with the face makeup.
Okay, but they did show the praise dancing.
They showed praise dancing, but
I hear you.
But again, you've set me up that it's not just the dance; it's the ritualized face paint as well.
That's fair.
There's one moment where one of the dancers responds to a critique that is not in the documentary, but it's clearly a critique somebody has made, that you know, some of the dancing is too suggestive, and some people don't like it when children and young girls are doing it. Yeah. But I thought they could have unpacked that a bit.
Well, you know what?
Because I do think this is something that you could dig into, and I'm not just going to keep listing these types of things,
right? But just on that point, because I remember that, because I actually liked the way he handled it in that moment, because, you know, it's one of the dancers talking about how people say, like, you know, the girls and young girls are shaking their things, whatever, and what is on the screen is a young girl dancing. And what he says, simply and plainly, she's out there being free, dancing on her own, moving her body as she wants. And I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Right. And I like that he put it in those simple terms. The suggestiveness of it is all in your mind.
Right. But this is an opportunity to bring in this community. Like, I think one of the wonderful aspects of this film was how it kind of situates this within this community.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, as you know, at one point, one of the young clowns says that clowning is not just dancing. You have to perform for children. So part of this definition is performing for children, which, you know, just to circle around, like, I wanted to see how the krumping maybe differed with their relationship to the community. And I thought, again, if you've set up that community is part of the definition, let's hear from some older people. Let's hear from these people again. Now you're maybe integrating it into the church and this. So I think a more seasoned documentarian would have followed some of these threads.
I do too, and I see where he could have been a bit more investigative, right, in developing the story
without it becoming this fussy thing like we're talking about.
I see where he could have done that, but I think, and you're right, one, he's new to documentaries at this point, so he's used to, you know, seeing life and letting life happen in the lens. So I think he is falling back a little bit on that. But I do think that, to a degree, some of the questions that some of what you're looking for is addressed by the dancers. They speak to it, you know. That was for the kids, like the clowning was for the kids, but we've moved on because this is more for us, which why they become more of a community to themselves, of in and of themselves, being there for one another, you know? So I think that kind of speaks to where it lands as far as being outwardly to the communally outward. Maybe they turned it a little bit more insular for them.
So how does Tommy respond to that?
Well, no, I do think the connective tissue about Tommy with that maybe a question or two could have pulled that. But an argument can also be made that you see a little bit, at least enough about how, let me rephrase that, a window into how Tommy is receiving that when you have the scene with him and Larry and they're mocking the Krumpers.
Right. But see that, like for that to be all you get from him about krumping.
Right. That's where maybe a little bit more.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But
and like you, I'm glad that they didn't center the Asian group of clowns or that one lone white krumper at all. But I do, again, if you set it up that South Central has this history of unrest, and so much of the unrest, and to be clear, I don't know if the Asian Krumpers were Korean.
Right.
But certainly when you think about South Central, you think about unrest, you think about the tension between Black people and the Korean American community.
Yes.
I was so curious about, because it wasn't one Korean Krumper.
No.
It was a group of them.
It was a nice size.
And, you know, for you to drop this amazingly evocative image, it's like, how the hell this young group of Koreans in South Central are krumping. Like, where did this come from?
That's their story.
That's their story. But again, what do you kind of do with, I mean, look, the thing's only an hour and 24 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, certainly you got time that you can talk a little more, which, and this, I'm thinking about something like Paris is Burning. And one of the things that I liked about Paris is Burning is that was a multi-year project.
Yes.
So that towards the end, you could see how it had started to go mainstream a little bit, how it is. And I do think for a documentary that was made in 2005, and if you've seen Dance at all, so much has been taken from this.
Yeah.
And one of the many things that this documentary does well is that it connects the experiences that these young people, primarily young people, have had, and how they use this dance.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the dancers who now have integrated it into their dance don't come from that. It's it's
true.
It's yet another iteration of the old saying. They want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues.
That's right.
I would have loved to see that, and again, that's unfair because I don't know how long it took him to make this. I don't know, and again, something like Paris is Burning, she was able to have this multi-year connection, but it was striking to me seeing this, and you turn on TikTok or whatever, and it's a whole lot of people not from South Central doing this, and there was that as well. But all that aside, frankly, I said all of that because you said all of the wonderful things that I wanted to say, but much like you, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that this document exists, which, frankly, to sort of go back to what I just said about they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues. If you don't document it, people will say that we didn't invent it.
Well, yes.
And then, I don't know, just off the top of my head, you'll have a breakdance team that goes to the Olympics, and I don't know how many black people were on the breakdance team. So, but yeah, great documentary. Great documentary. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, most certainly.
Really enjoyed it.
And I think it goes without saying, missionaries.
Would you recommend?
We would highly recommend that you see RIZE.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. What are you waiting for? Mm-hmm. Well, wait till the end of the show.
Then do a stanky leg and go right over and watch it.
You never did a stanky leg?
Why would I have done a stanky leg?
It's a stanky leg. It's a stanky leg.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Throw your knee out or something. Go ahead. Go right ahead. Talk to you tomorrow and you'll be stiff and so. Go right ahead.